Time now 7:10. So, our top story this morning. The Lord Advocate, Scotland's top law officer, has robustly denied doing anything wrong after a fierce grilling by opposition MPs in the Holyrood Parliament yesterday. Dorothy Bain was accused of corruption. There were calls for her to resign. The row's over an email she sent to the First Minister about the case against the former SNP Chief Executive, Peter Murrell. In a memo in January, she told John Swinney that Murrell had been accused of embezzling almost £460,000 from the party weeks before those details became public. Mr Murrell's yet to make a plea. A preliminary hearing is now scheduled for the 25th of May. The memo, which came to light in a report by the Sun newspaper, prompted this fierce exchange between the Lord Advocate and the Scottish Conservative leader Russell Finlay.
This smacks of corruption. It undermines public trust in the office of the Lord Advocate, who's supposed to be politically neutral. Any remnants of that neutrality are in ruins.
It was not a minute that was sent to seek to influence. It was a minute that was for information and the protection of the process. It's about informing of a significant development which is entering the public domain. I have had no involvement in this case, and any suggestion that I am corrupt or my position is compromised, I roundly reject.
So, pretty harsh exchanges in Holyrood yesterday, but the whole case has highlighted an old issue with the so-called dual role of the Lord Advocate, who's simultaneously the country's chief prosecutor and a member of Cabinet and a key government advisor. But why might that be a problem? Let's speak to Tommy Ross, KC, an expert on this and many other things. Good morning to you.
Morning, Martin.
Good to speak to you. Listen, let's just go through a few things, because there's people will be confused by a lot of this about what the row is about, and that's possibly because there are several layers to this row. So let's try and peel them out. We've got a bit of time to do this. There was a first row a couple of days ago. Douglas Ross was complaining about the timing of Mr Murrell appearing in court, because initially we were told he was initially scheduled to appear, in fact, today in court, and that's been put back, as we've discussed, to the 25th of May. After the election. That is crucial, says Douglas Ross, and he says it stinks. Does it? And how common is it in law for a case to be knocked back by a few weeks?
Yeah, it's extremely common. In fact, I would probably say, Martin, that preliminary hearings are more commonly postponed at the first hearing stage than actually go ahead, so there's nothing unusual about it at all. I've also made the point that if there was anything suspicious about it, the prosecution had the option of indicting the case for September, August, June, July, August, which would have been after the election. So it's a strange way to go about it if this was in any way set up, to indict it before the election. And then to agree, as I understand it, at the request of the defence, who I'm not sure of any interest in the timing of the election, at the request of the defence to postpone it until after the election.
Right. I mean, that was kind of Monday, Tuesday's row. And in fairness, that has kind of died down a bit, perhaps because it was superseded by another row yesterday, a row about this memo that the Lord Advocate has sent to the First Minister. John Swinney told about the charge against Peter Murrell before the rest of us learned about it. Again, pretty extreme criticism of that in the chamber yesterday. There was talk about political corruption. There were calls for the Lord Advocate to resign because of this. What do you make of that? Is this normal that this kind of thing should happen, or is it unusual?
Well, Martin, I thought it was an absolute disgrace. I mean, the current Lord Advocate has practised at the Scottish Bar for 40 years. She's a stellar career. She's trusted by every practising lawyer and every judge in the country. And for her to be accused of corruption without a shred of evidence to support it was one of the most shameful episodes I've seen in that building. And I hope that now everything's calmed down. The Scottish Conservatives are big enough to apologise for making that slur, because being trusted is the most important thing for every lawyer in the country. And for somebody who is trusted to be accused in some way of dishonesty, I thought was shameful.
I mean, she's trusted by every lawyer in the country. You say she's clearly not trusted by every politician. What do you think? If you think they're wrong in what they are saying here? Do you think they are willfully they're willfully wrong here? Do you think they're playing politics here? Is what I'm asking you.
Well, I think it's obvious that that's what they're doing. They're playing for votes. I mean, there's an election coming up. She gave she's amongst the job that she has two jobs actually. She is the head of the prosecutorial service. She's also the chief advisor to the government, and in her role as the principal legal advisor to the government, she advised the First Minister of an important stage in the proceedings, anticipating that he would be asked questions and reminding him that when there are live legal proceedings, you need to be careful with what you say about it. That's it. That's what she did. She went along, and in a few minutes she explained, and was then subjected for 25 minutes to cross-examination, displaying a lack of understanding of the process at some stages, and as I say, also giving people the opportunity to sully a reputation which she spent 40 years building up.
But what she has to do, and we'll get on to her dual role in a minute, because she's under extreme scrutiny, because she not only is the chief prosecutor in the country, but also a member of John Swinney's cabinet. She has to be absolutely meticulous in her transparency on all of this. Did she need to give John Swinney all of the details that were in that memo? She could have just said this case is now active. Did she need to give him the figure, which the rest of us didn't get until I think The Sun published it because they submitted an FOI. I could be wrong in that, but we certainly didn't get it till about a month later. Was that figure necessary in that memo?
Well, I don't think it, probably strictly not necessary, but was it a surprise? I mean, the figure was disclosed, as I remember it, when Mr Murrell appeared in Edinburgh Sheriff Court back in March of last year. So, everybody had a fair idea regarding the ballpark figure. There's been widespread speculation in the newspapers as to the figure. I don't know what political advantage, maybe somebody can explain this to me. When the figure was already out there in the terms of his first appearance, what political advantage Mr Swinney did obtain by receiving the exact figure? I mean, I don't know.
Well, maybe we can turn that on its head, Tommy, and ask what political advantage the opposition politicians gained by that, because they got a chance to pounce a little bit and say, that didn't need to be in there. What are you playing at? Yeah. We need to know why that was in there. Your role is unsustainable. I mean, do they have an argument there that the Lord Advocate, the chief prosecutor in the country, should also have a political position, should be the ear, in the ear of the First Minister? You can see where that becomes problematic on occasion, can't you?
100%, absolutely. I think every lawyer would agree that it was a very bad idea drafting the Scotland Act in the way in which it was drafted. It's a casualty of the Scotland Act that the Lord Advocate was made part of the Scottish Government. That was a Labour Act of Parliament at Westminster. And ironically, she was dragged along to Parliament to answer a question, as I understand it, posed by a Labour politician, when it was the Labour Party who were responsible for putting the Lord Advocate in that position by drafting the Scotland Act in a way which gave the Lord Advocate this dual function.
You are, certainly in the course of this interview, a robust defender of the Lord Advocate, of Dorothy Bain, and the way she does her job. You say she's trusted throughout your profession. Should her political role be stripped away? Should she be taken out of cabinet? Should there be a greater separation? I'm very anxious not to personalise it to Dorothy Bain. But certainly, to be fair to Joanna Cherry, who was a Member of Parliament, she actually introduced a private member's bill at Westminster, because the Scotland Act was Westminster legislation, and the general thought, which I agree with, is it will probably take Westminster legislation to amend it. And, the SNP, having put in their election manifesto in 2021 that they would address this subject, essentially gave it to an academic to do a report which has never been seen. We're now many years on. And when Joanna Cherry introduced it in Westminster, as I understand it, she got very little support for the proposal which she made, which would have dealt with this very issue, and it just withered in the vine. So, everybody agrees that it has to be done. It's not Dorothy Bain's fault that it hasn't been done, and it seems grossly unfair that she should be taken along to court and pilloried in public for the fact that the politicians have failed to sort this subject out. So briefly, what should happen now then? How do you get it done?
there would have to be legislation, you know, there would have to be, I think there would have to be legislation in Westminster, and, you know, instead of this performative rubbish that we saw in Holyrood yesterday, why don't they get serious about it and get round the table and sort it out?
Right, well, listen, fascinating hearing from you. There are plenty of other views on this, if you've got a view on it. 80295 is the text number. But Tommy Ross, KC, we're going to leave it there. Thanks very much indeed for being with us this morning.
And we've got some views on the CW